Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Today we're going to continue the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and more specifically on this video, the Sega Saturn core. Because if you haven't heard, the core is now an update out and it is officially released. But I've been getting a lot of questions about this, so this video is going to be talking about what the core currently is, where it stands, where it came from, and where it has to go from here. Because just because this is an update out does not mean the core is finished. There does seem to be a perception out there that the core is done, and that is definitely not the truth. What we have is absolutely incredible, and SRG320 has done an immaculate job on the work so far, especially considering his circumstances, but I do want to go over where the core came from, where we are, and where we're going to end up in the future. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But Elevator Action Returns is one of the first games I played on the core, and I've played so many games and so many previews. This is what it used to look like around like March of this year. There were graphics missing all across the board in Panzer Dragoon, and the menu options were super minimal. The amount of progress this core has seen over the last like 8 months has been nothing short of spectacular, and following along with the progress with all of you here on the channel has been amazing. Things like Sonic Jam here, the little 3D world didn't really look correct back in the day, and we had no floor texture whatsoever. This is where the core came from, and today when you download it on Update All, you're going to have a lot more grass there. But again, Elevator Action Returns was one of the first games that worked on the core that I personally attempted, and this is just a spectacular game, a pure 10 out of 10. And seeing this core evolve in real time, there's been so many different iterations, so many different versions, and now that it's an update all, a lot of you that have been commenting saying you're going to wait for that, you can now start testing the core. But I want to be very clear about something, and this does seem to confuse some people. When a core is included in Update All, that does not mean it is done. It just means it's now added to the MiSTer main repository and comes down with everything else. Something like Die Hard Arcade here is going to work on your MiSTer with Update All. It used to be that there were some graphical glitches that you'll see in just a moment, but things have gotten a lot better. But I need you to be aware, because it is creating some confusion, that the core is still a work in progress. There's still going to be updates, it's still going to be worked on. This is not the final core iteration by any stretch of the imagination. Some games like Virtual Cop 2 are going to work spectacularly well. You'd be hard pressed to tell whether or not you were playing on real hardware. Other games will still show glitches completely, and some games do not work whatsoever, and this has really been tripping a lot of you up. Just be aware that Update All does not mean done, it just means an easier way to download it versus doing a manual installation progress. And if you want to see a new Saturn core setup guide, leave me a comment down below. But this is where we got our start with Daytona USA, and I got going through these videos just to talk about the progress of the core. The game would run, but there were definitely some polygon glitches, all these polygons basically stretching to a vanishing point infinity-wise into the center of the screen. You could play the game, it would freeze a lot, and it definitely had some glitching, but it was one of those things that was still so impressive to see this happen on the core. Today, if you play the same exact game, it is perfection. The audio may be a little low in spots, and I've been getting a lot of comments about that. Some of the Saturn audio is just quiet. I'm sure it'll be fixed in a more future core, but right now you might just have to turn your TV up a little bit depending on the game you want to play. But jumping right into a race on Daytona USA, if this wasn't the real Sega Saturn, I would have no idea. Outside of the volume being slightly low, this is Daytona USA how you remember on the Saturn, which is to say not a very good port compared to the Model 2 arcade original, but as far as the hardware on Saturn is concerned, an extremely accurate representation of what the real Sega Saturn hardware would do. And that's what you can expect to find out of the core in Update All. Some games are going to feel like they're perfection compared to real hardware, some games you're definitely going to see some graphical glitches, and some games just won't work whatsoever. But bug reports are coming in, and we're now at the stage where people are reporting more issues, which is good because I feel like the amount of people testing these cores as they came out in the MiSTer Discord is probably underneath 100 people. Sure, a lot of you watch my videos, but most of you watch them from the perspective of just seeing what was currently working. Stuff like Sega Touring Car Championship here, if you play it today on the Update All core, you're going to have a great race, but you're going to see once you actually get into the menus, there's going to be a little bit of strangeness, and I know a lot of you commented, so many in fact, that you were going to wait to test the core and play Saturn games until it reached Update All, so I'm assuming there's thousands of people out there that are now getting their first experience with the Sega Saturn core, so tell me down below how it's going. I know in the last video a lot of people were disappointed that some games weren't working, stuff like X-Men vs Street Fighter I showed in a recent preview. You're going to be able to see the attract screen, everything is going to work exactly as you would expect it to until you actually hit the start button button and get into game, you're going to get a lot of graphical corruption as far as the colors are concerned, and then the game is going to freeze and hang on you. And that is the story as of recording this voiceover. It is Friday at 11 a.m. and I'm going to run this on Sunday, I believe. Other games like Street Fighter 03 here are going to run exactly like you would expect them to. Responsive fast controls, good graphics, great music, everything is just going to be in the proper place for you to get an amazing experience playing the Saturn core. And that's the fun part about testing these cores and talking about their development. Some games are 10 out of 10 in performance, some games are 0 out of 10 because they just don't boot whatsoever. Some games from the same developer, Capcom here, some games are going to freeze and not be playable at all, some are going to be perfect, and some are going to be somewhere in between with some graphical glitches here and there. And that is still the current situation, and that's why I really wanted to make this video and talk about it, because there is that still perception out there that update all means a core is finished. That is not how update all works. It just means it's been added into the downloader so that everyone can get it and play it. And again, if you want to see that setup guide, let me know, because another big thing that recently came to the core is CHD, or compressed hunks of data support. You no longer need bin.q files, you can use CHD, which compresses the game down into a smaller size and doesn't have any performance impact whatsoever, especially because the Saturn library is so big and it is a finite amount of storage on an SD card. A lot of people were super excited and waiting for CHD support to come, and it is here today. But stuff like Burning Rangers here, this is a preview from a video I did back in, I believe, April, when I looked at the time code and date on it, and you'll see here that a lot of the graphics are missing, and while the game is booting, it doesn't look like the Burning Rangers we all know, and it definitely didn't have very good performance, because the minute you got through this little door here, you could take control of the character just a little bit, but you would end up in a situation where the game would halt the execution of the code and wouldn't move forward from there. All of the textures on the floor are missing, but it does still look good even though it doesn't look correct. But you'll see here, the minute we get into the training space, we're going to get control of our character, and the game is going to execute code for just a bit, but then it's going to hang, and that's a lot of what the original core did. You would get some performance out of it, but then it would stop completely in its tracks. Now on the current core, you can play Burning Rangers and you can finish the game. How do I know that? Because I did it in the background just in my spare time, and I was able to see the credits roll. I did have one random freeze, but because saving is currently in the core, I was just able to reload the save, take a different route, and be able to see the credits. That's how impressive this core has become this year. It's doubly impressive that SRG 320's done it in its current situation. And there's so many weird and diverse games to play on the Sega Saturn. Something like Phantasmagoria here is not the type of game you would expect to see on the Saturn, but it is here and it does work, and it's just so fun to go through the Saturn library. And I know a lot of you, this is going to be your first time ever encountering the Sega Saturn, because it wasn't very popular back in the day, so this might be the first time you actually get a chance to play the hardware now that it is on MiSTer FPGA, and that makes me excited for all of you, because I've been playing the Saturn since it was new on store shelves back in the 90s. I've been collecting for it and playing it all the way up until the current day, but for some of you, this is going to be the first time you check it out, and I'm excited for you for that. Other games like S-Style here used to work, used to have some aspect ratio issues, and would definitely freeze. You can see that while this does look good, this doesn't look like the game should if you were playing on real hardware. But with recent core updates and it now being an update all, if we move over to a recent capture, it does look correct. The aspect ratio looks good. All of the sprites are drawing exactly as you would expect. It is just such a better performance, and it's so amazing to see this happen in real time. Doing these video previews has been so fun, and I'm going to keep making them as the core keeps updating, because there's still a metric crap ton of fun to be had on the Sega Saturn core as we get new updates. Just because it's an update all doesn't mean the fun has to stop, because there's still an immense amount of games that I have not yet tested on the Sega Saturn. So leave me a comment down below and tell me if there's something you particularly want me to show. Or games like Symphony of the Night on the Saturn were working and then stopped working and now they work again. But both 2D and 3D are working great. Saturn Bomberman, my favorite Sega Saturn game of all time. You can play it from start to finish on the core. It is perfection. I can't see anything wrong with it whatsoever. But if you move over to the 3D side, something like Wipeout again also is working exactly as you would expect it to. And that is the main takeaway and the reason I did this video, because the Sega Saturn core is now an update all. We have save support, we have CHD support. This core is getting ready for prime time, but I want you to understand that it's not 100% there yet, because I've been getting a lot of comments asking why certain games don't work, and that's just because it is not there yet. There's still going to be improvements, there's still going to be updates, and I can't wait to see what SRG 320 has in store for all of us. But if you've yet to test the Sega Saturn on MiSTer FPGA, just go ahead and run update all, and you'll be off to the races. And if you do want that setup guide, leave me a comment down below. I'm probably going to make it sometime for late next week, but I want to know if you guys need it. Short of that, Happy Sunday, go enjoy some Saturn, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.